On today's Newsmakers, a new biblical epic, a shocking conversion, and the transgender battle. That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each and every week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable figures. On today's Newsmakers, a new biblical epic has arrived on Amazon Prime. House of David star Michael Iskander joins us to discuss the powerful series and his role in it. Let's welcome him here to the show. All right, so let's start with acting. How did you get into the acting world?
I got into the acting world accidentally. I was in high school, and it was history class, and just living my life. And it was like the first 2 weeks of school, sophomore year, and then we had switched seats that day, and I happened to sit next to my friend who was in like the choir. And at that time, it happened to be that the director told all the students, hey, if you guys get some boys to audition for the choir, because we're low on boys, then I'll give you $10. And so she came to me, she said, hey, can I ask you a favor? Could you audition for the choir to help me get $10? It's just a small favor. I was like, sure, yeah, no worries. So I go during lunch and go do the audition, and the director gives me all the tests, and he looks at me and he goes, where did you come from? Out of class. Well, your schedule is going to change, and we're going to put you here and here and here, and you're going to do this and that. That's how I got into choir and acting and musicals. And
so you're being a good friend. You were basically like, I'll go do this. You end up getting a career, essentially, going onto a path to a career.
She got $10, I got a career.
I think you made out pretty well in that deal.
Yeah.
So here you are, you're playing David. You auditioned for this role. What was it like to receive the news that you were going to be taking this on? Because it's a big role to take on.
I mean, it's pretty life-changing when someone tells you you're going to be the lead of a new TV show and you're going to play David. I mean, of all the different people to play, I think David is one of the most interesting people because he's just, there's so much duality in him. He's the epitome of what it means to be human, to make mistakes, but to truly have a heart for God and a heart that seeks after God's own heart. I think that's one of the main themes that we explore in the show and what the story of David is about. And I'm blessed to be able to tell that story.
Well, and I know faith is a part of your life, your family's life. You know, has this sort of changed the way, because of bringing these, I'm going to use the word characters, real life people in the Bible to life in this way, has that changed how you see Scripture, how you see even other stories in the Bible?
Yeah. Because now I view it from a point of view as just human beings. And so I put the context of that time and of these people into the story. Like I was reading, the story of Samson with that context, and it just puts a whole different perspective on the Bible, and I think it makes it that much more interesting to read and to discover. Personally, I mean, I love it. And it's so fun as an actor for your job to be discovering more about the Bible. It's like, that's fun.
Yeah. Being able to help other people think through, no matter where they are on the faith scale, what these people went through, what their life was like, and what it would have been like to face a giant, right? To have the courage to do that. What that particular, without giving too many spoilers away, but that particular scene, preparing for that, what was that like? The infamous battle.
We're in it right now, so I'm still discovering. But one of the really interesting things is the fear of it. Like, I guess I always thought of David being so courageous, so brave. But there's none of that without fear. And finding all the stakes of what it means to be the only person from your entire people to choose to go up against the scariest man they have ever faced. And what that really means. And are you willing to truly give up everything, even your life, to protect the ones you love. That's the context that is really being discovered right now, and the context that we're telling. I think we just did the scene this morning of David in the tent with the armor, and him deciding that this armor is not for him. And there's other stuff that happens in the scene that I won't talk about because it's spoilers. But it's just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to just get to look at that and to live in it. And I can't wait for people to see it.
You know, when it comes to this experience so far, how has it changed you, as a person? In what ways have you developed, grown spiritually in particular?
In many ways. There's a verse that I have hung up in my place right now. It's Proverbs. It's trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. And I think reading that every day, it takes a lot of trust in the Lord to do something like this. Because there are challenges. There's a lot of challenges. But to trust him, to acknowledge him, and to forget the fact that you're making a TV show and it's really fun, and that your makeup and hair is all fun and cool. But the reason is to glorify him and to honor him and to put him first. And I think that's one way it's changed me. It's allowed me to put perspective to all of this and to life, and to realize why we are living life.
Well, and look at your journey. You came to this country young, acting was something you really wanted to do. Your friend wants the $10. You go and do that. I mean, you can see how the path has sort of been paved for you now, looking back, and there's a lot more, I'm sure, ahead. I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure.
You can watch episodes of House of David right now on Prime. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers.
And I slipped. I couldn't use the whole right side of my body.
I went from having a promising career as a neuroscientist to having a medical death sentence. People would pray for me, and sometimes it felt like this power that just zapped me.
So how do you know this wasn't psychosomatic, a misdiagnosis, something that was being missed in that process? Are miracles real? Do they happen today? Let's investigate.
Welcome back to Newsmakers. Next up, we're welcoming Maine State Representative Laurel Libby. She is here to talk about the ongoing battle over transgender issues in her state. Let's welcome her here to Newsmakers. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. As we know, President Trump signed an executive order earlier this month to protect women's sports, but something is happening right now in Maine. Can you tell us a little bit about the scenario there right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So following President Trump's executive order, the Maine Principals Association came out and said they were not going to abide by that they were still going to allow biological males to participate in girls' sports. And just this week, we had a state championship, an indoor track state championship, and a biological male was allowed to participate in the girls' pole vault. And he actually won the state championship just this past Monday, displacing displacing girls from the podium as he won that. And in fact, his jump enabled that team to win the entire event by 1 point.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here. You're obviously a politician, and it is difficult to speak out on certain issues, for politicians, especially issues like this, although it feels like the temperature on this issue has really changed quite a bit pretty rapidly in the country. What has made you, and then we'll get into the finer details of the story and what's going on there, but what has made you so willing to speak up on this particular issue?
Yeah, this has been an issue before us in Maine for a number of years now. When I was first in the legislature, we had a bill regarding boys and girls sports. The Democrat majority at the time killed that bill. It was to ban boys from girls' sports. And so this has been an ongoing issue. And it is important that we speak up. This is not fair that our girls are having to compete on an unlevel playing field and that biological males are being permitted. And folks can't claim anymore that this is not happening when a boy wins a championship. And so I heard this from a friend who is impacted and it immediately felt, I have to post this and share because it's not fair. These girls, you look at the picture and there's a boy on the podium in first place, and there's two girls who tied for second place that would have won if not for a biological male jumping in their category. That's just not fair for Maine girls.
Have you paid any sort of price politically in terms of people reacting negatively at the very least as a result of speaking out on these issues?
Yeah, I've heard from Maine folks on both sides of the issue. I've heard folks, saying, thank you so much for speaking up. Our girls deserve to have a fair and level playing field. I've also heard from folks who are unhappy about my post. This is a public event that this individual has chosen to take part in, and the results are public. And this is public information. And so I've heard from folks on both sides of the aisle. I've been asked by Democrat leadership in the House to take the post down. And as you can see, I have not done that. Our girls deserve folks standing up and advocating for a fair and level playing field. And we'll have legislation coming up this session in the State House to discuss this topic of if boys should be allowed to play in girls' sports here in Maine. And so there's going to be plenty of opportunity for folks to stand up and make their voices heard.
What is your understanding of the executive order in terms of what it demands, and how can that be reconciled with this decision that is happening then at the state level?
I think the executive order is pretty clear that boys should not be participating in girls' sports. And yet the Maine Principals Association has come out and basically said they plan to defy that and allow boys to participate in girls' sports. They have a policy that's been out for some time now that says that girls are allowed to participate in scholastic athletics in their gender identity. So not just their biological sex, but also their gender identity. And clearly that's what's going on here, and why this biological male was allowed to participate in pole vaulting on Monday and then won that championship.
I mean, what do you think drives this? I mean, why do you believe, you made a case for why you think this is not fair. Why do you think so many people still continue to push this, even in light of the fact that it does feel like the public there's been a shift, a turn against these sorts of things? Why are there so many forces in your view that continue to advocate for, the opposite gender to be able to compete in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. Frankly, I think that folks don't realize that they're on the wrong side of this issue. We've got Democrat leadership in the House and the Senate and the governor's seat here in Maine who think that this is what folks want. And so they're doubling down. 79% of Americans, according to recent polling, do not want boys participating in girls' sports. It could not be more clear that Americans, and Mainers certainly fall in that, don't want boys competing in girls' sports and want girls' accomplishments to be able to be celebrated. We're erasing years and years of accomplishments in girls' sports when we allow boys to participate.
What is your message to the critics who say, hey, Representative Libby, we don't want to hear this from you. Go away. Stop talking about this. What do you say to them?
They can feel free not to tune in, but it's important that we continue to speak up for Maine girls and make sure that they, at the end of the day, have a level playing field and that they can participate in their sports and feel safe and know that folks are standing up on their behalf.
Well, I so appreciate you taking the time to address this. Any final thoughts or comments for the audience today?
Thank you so much. Appreciate you helping bring light to this issue and making sure that Maine girls have a voice in this.
We'll continue to cover this story and others like it as they unfold, and we'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers.
And I slipped. I couldn't use the whole right side of my body.
I went from having a promising career as a neuroscientist to having a medical death sentence. People would pray for me, and sometimes it felt like this power that just zapped me.
So how do you know this wasn't psychosomatic, a misdiagnosis, something that was being missed in that process? Are miracles real? Do they happen today? Let's investigate.
Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we are sitting down with Larry Sanger. He's a philosopher and the co-founder of Wikipedia, and he's joining us today to talk about the powerful details surrounding his conversion to Christianity. Let's welcome him here to Newsmakers. Larry, I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with me. You've had a busy week now with a lot of reaction to a post that you wrote extensively documenting your conversion to Christianity. Now, I want to get into all the details of that, but you were a skeptic for about 35 years. I know this is a loaded question, but what drove that skepticism?
I mean, it went back to my childhood and basically what I call methodological skepticism. So in philosophy, a skeptic is simply someone who believes knowledge is impossible, knowledge of some sort. A methodological skeptic says they provisionally do not make up their mind about something in order to, at some later date, come to some, rational justification of a better view. And so that's essentially how I approached all, religious questions and philosophical questions. So it wasn't anything particular about Christianity, really.
Yeah. Well, and I know too that, and I thought this was very interesting in your extensive write-up, kind of sharing this journey, you made it clear that you weren't an enemy of the faith. It wasn't anything like that. It was sort of what you just described. And I think that's interesting because there are different levels of people who are on the skeptical sort of realm, right? There's the people who are Richard Dawkins. There's the people who just aren't sure. There's people who just haven't had the feeling or the connection to it.
Right.
And I know you had, faith exposure as a child. During this 35 years, did you have moments of attempting to pray, attempting to connect with God, feelings maybe that there was something there during that time?
I did. Basically, well, let's put it this way. I wasn't necessarily praying to God per se, but I had a sort of internal dialogue. And sometimes I even wrote it out on, in text with some supremely wise being. And sometimes I would even call that being God, not that I believed that that was God, but in order to just sort of clarify my thought, I was using the writing form of dialogue. That's all. I continued to do that. I had done something similar to that, but actually directing it to God when I was a child, and I'm still doing it now. Actually, I think it's a good thing to do in general. But yes, now I direct those thoughts to God. But back then, I certainly did not. At least I didn't think I was.
Yeah. Well, and it's such an interesting journey too. Obviously, somebody like yourself who has created something like Wikipedia that everybody knows, you're a person who is attached to something that a lot of people know about. And so when somebody like you with your background comes forward and says, I've had this conversion, I've had this experience, it's going to get more attention than if other people maybe say the same thing. When you wrote about this, did you anticipate the reaction that you've received? And tell us a little bit about that reaction.
I did not. I just assumed, to be honest, a lot of people have more or less forgotten about me. I'm not in the news that much anymore, except when I, badmouth Wikipedia. So I expected it was going to be a very small reaction. maybe a few responses to the blog post, and maybe a dozen retweets on X. But no, it just it blew up in a way that really took me by surprise. I didn't know I was going to be spending a couple of weeks doing this, responding to people.
Yeah, I said it's been a busy week. It's been a busy couple of weeks. I think. So, okay, what is the overwhelming response? People finding out that this person who was a skeptic for 35 years, who is a well-known person, who is now a Christian, was the response overwhelmingly positive? Was it negative? Does it run the gamut?
It's been overwhelmingly positive. The very first response from any sort of atheist was just a couple of days ago. No high-profile atheists have deigned to observe anything about my case.
Well, that's incredible. And my final question for you, just as we close this out, how have you changed as a person when you go back to before 2020, the way you think, the way you live? What has transformed as a result of this?
Well, I think I used to be a little more hard-edged, a little more of a jerk. A lot of philosophers are, by the way. At least, there's some very nice ones, of course, but a lot of philosophers tend to be very pointed because they're taught so much logic that they scoff at simplistic errors, or what they regard as simplistic errors. I used to be like that a lot. I don't do that quite as much. I'm working on it. And I'd say my relationship, with my family, all of my family, has gotten better. And I probably work harder. Lost a little weight. I don't know. Number of other things probably. But I've changed a lot, though. I do feel like I have changed quite a bit.
I love it. Well, I love this story, and I thank you so much for taking the time. I think getting a chance to kind of talk through, it's one thing to read what you wrote, which was incredible, but to really parse through that with you and hear the different pieces of the journey, I appreciate you taking the time today.
Right. Yep. No problem.
You can go to larrysanger.org for more information about his story and his conversion. We'll be right back in just a moment with more of the show.
And I slipped. I couldn't use the whole right side of my body.
I went from having a promising career as a neuroscientist to having a medical death sentence. People would pray for me, and sometimes it felt like this power that just zapped me.
So how do you know this wasn't psychosomatic, a misdiagnosis, something that was being missed in that process? Are miracles real? Do they happen today? Let's investigate.
That's all for Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head on over to the CBN News YouTube channel. That's where you'll find the full interviews that you saw on today's episode. Plus, you can check out our daily Newsmakers podcast. We feature one full interview every single day. You can subscribe to that on your favorite podcast platform. As for this show, we'll see you again next week.